Hello everyone, it's Emma and welcome back to my channel. Today is a very interesting video. We're going to be talking about eco-friendly things Japan gets right. But if you've been around the channel for a while, I did a really similar video, I guess the opposite video, last spring, which is wasteful things I hate about Japan. So I didn't just want to trash on everything they're getting wrong about eco-friendly living. I want to redeem them and show you just how eco-friendly Japan is. To an extent. All of the wasteful things still stand, so we're going to try to balance it out because obviously no country's perfect, no city is perfect when it comes to reducing their waste. So we're going to be talking about that today, and I want to end my time in Japan on a good note because by the time you're seeing this, I'm actually going to be moving out of Japan and back to the US, if you didn't know that. But I've lived in Japan for 3 years, so I've gotten a pretty good grasp of how eco-friendly they are, how not eco-friendly they are, and I want to talk about today all the eco things they do. But also keep in mind that I'm going to be comparing some of these things to practices I've seen in the United States, and I haven't lived there in 3 years, so things could have changed between now and then. But with all that out of the way, let's just jump right in. If you find that I talk too fast for you, you can change the speed of the video using the gear icon right down here, and let's get into it. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt. These are all my opinions. I'm not saying Japan is the most eco-friendly, the least eco-friendly. These are just some observations. The first one though, we're gonna talk about some things with their toilets, is they have a low flush and a high flush option. I think this is so cool because, you know, with standard toilets, it just has one option, just the regular or lever. Japan's toilets, you can go, it depends on the toilet, unfortunately. You can either go backwards and it's a small flush and forwards and it's a big flush, or it's the opposite. Here are the symbols right here to tell you what they mean. The symbol for big means oki. So the way that you pronounce this in Japanese is either chisai or ko, but basically, I'm just gonna say it, if you poop, you pick the big flush, if you pee, you pick the small flush. And this is really cool because if you don't need the big flush, the extra water, you choose the small flush and it uses less water, and I think that's really cool. Going right along with that, another toilet thing that they do that's awesome is bidets everywhere. I love this. I used to be weirded out by bidets, as most Westerners are, but now I love them, and I'm really gonna miss having them everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I literally mean everywhere, except for like airplanes and like some random parks in the middle of nowhere. But literally everything else, hotels, restaurants, convenience stores, some parks even still have them in their public restrooms. And you might be thinking, why are bidets so great? I talk more about that in my bidet installation video, but briefly, bidets clean you off better so that you don't have to use as much toilet paper, and it's also more hygienic. If you haven't used one yet, get on the bidet train. It's not weird, it's better for you. And it's better for the planet. Since installing our own bidet here in our house, we've already reduced our toilet paper consumption incredibly. So having those public bidets throughout Japan is just amazing. They probably save so much toilet paper. And then another thing with toilets, some of their toilets have a sink on top. I'll try to find an image for you and just put it right here. But basically what I mean is that water that you use to wash your hands goes into the tank and is repurposed to then flush the toilet. That is so cool. Instead of, you know, using clean water to wash your hands and clean water to flush the toilets, you wash your hands and then use that gray water to flush the toilet. Amazing. Amazing inventions. Okay, that's enough toilet tips. Let's move on to something else. So the next few are about recycling and waste. The first one in this category is they sort their recycling. So while this isn't necessarily more eco-friendly, because I guess, yes, it does take more bags in order to sort them, but sorting means it's got a better chance of being recycled. So in the United States, when I lived there, we had one bin. We put all of our recycling in there. Paper, plastic, metal, glass, everything in between. And it didn't have a lid either. So all this stuff would get soaked if it was raining and then probably wouldn't be getting recycled, at least the paper. So by having like the citizens do the sorting themselves, it saves them time, and by putting it in the bags, it also doesn't get wet. So all of this stuff has a higher increased chance of being recycled, I think. But going right along with that, the next thing that they do is they won't accept recycling if it's dirty. Literally, if it's dirty, they'll put a little note on your bag of trash saying, I'm not taking this until you clean up your mess, pretty much. In the US, again, when I lived there, we would throw everything in there. Not washed out milk jugs, not washed out cans of tomato sauce, whatever. Everything was so crusty and gross. And then we would throw it all in one bin all together. And so that gets me thinking, like, that almost certainly guarantees that every load we put out there was probably just sent to the landfill. But going right along those lines, something else that they do is they teach their children from a young age to clean up after themselves, that they carry that on into adulthood. Meaning, you know, in the US, we put all of our dirty recycling in one bin, thinking someone else is gonna sort it for me, someone else is gonna clean it for me. But in Japan, they're like, I'm gonna take responsibility for cleaning this myself and bagging it and sorting it myself. They're just a very like team-centered society is what I've gathered from living here, where in the United States, it's more individualistic. Like, this is my life, I'm gonna do things my way. But in Japan, it's like, I need to do this for the good of others. And this is one of them. This doesn't necessarily like mean they teach them recycling from a young age, but most schools don't hire janitors. They will just have the kids clean up after themselves. If you've ever been to Japan, you'll have probably never seen a public trash can, but their streets are incredibly clean. That's another thing. The citizens just choose to take care of their environment. And I think this goes into recycling as well as the earth. They just know inherently not to litter, as well as they just know I have to clean up this recycling or else it's not going to get taken and no one else is going to do it for me, so I need to do it myself. Another recycling thing that Japan does that I think is really awesome is they have recycling bins in public places most of the time. I've seen more recycling bins in public than I have trash cans. You'll see them a lot outside of grocery stores, convenience stores, and also like in train stations and airports. In the US, again, I haven't been there in a few years, but when I left, it's just been 3 years, it was pretty much just trash cans. Maybe bottles, maybe cans, maybe. Mostly just trash cans though, but in Japan, if you see a trash can, it's gonna be almost always accompanied by recycling bins of all sorts. Most grocery stores have stuff too, like styrofoam, Tetra Pak, glass, like harder to recycle things. They'll still take them in public places. So say your curbside doesn't take glass in your area, you just drive to a grocery store that accepts glass and you dump it off there. But yeah, I consider this eco because last time I lived in the US, it was pretty much just public trash cans and not public recycling bins. Okay, moving on to some transportation things that Japan does impeccably. We're just gonna go ahead and start with it. I'm sure everyone knows about how great Japan's public transportation system is. It is on point. So I've only been to like 5 countries in my life, not very many. Japan's is easily the best that I've been to. So not only do they have the best train system I have ever seen. It is so smooth, it runs on time, it's so clean, but they also have great bus systems, great taxis, and of course everyone's heard of the famous Japan bullet train, the Shinkansen, which is amazing. I've only ridden on it once, and it was just kind of like, we're gonna ride this to like check it off our bucket list, plus it goes really fast and gets you where you need to go. But most of their trains are run on electricity, which is pretty cool, as well as the train system is clean. I've never seen like dirt, mud, trash on a train, and they're easy to use even for foreigners. We've never had a problem figuring out trains, and they're safe. I think that's a big thing too. They have specific like women's cars, which is really awesome. Something else though that they really encourage is biking. I'm sure if you live in a big city, even in the United States, you know that driving a car is a pain, if not almost impossible. So plenty of people work in Tokyo, but they live outside the city, or same with like Osaka, Nagoya, whatever it may be. So they'll commute to work, but it'll be so wasteful to get a car because you'll be sitting in traffic the whole time. It takes longer. So many people take the train, but so many people bike as well. And this is highly encouraged because so many cities in Japan have bike lanes. And I know this is popular too in like Canada and Europe, but this is really not a thing in the US, is even bike lanes. So they make biking really safe in most areas, which is amazing. Plus, they have easy storage for bikes. Like even just biking around on the military base we live on, I've never seen a bike stand. Like when I go to the gym, I have to prop my bike on the wall. When I go to the post office, I have to prop my bike on the wall. But in Japan, they have bike locks. You don't even have to buy yourself a lock. You just pull your front tire onto it and it locks on there like a parking garage. It's so cool. They even have some bike parking garages that are like multi-story, so intense, and it's really, really cool. I just really love seeing places that encourage public transportation, yes, but also transportation that uses no emissions, like biking. So this is not public transportation. It's a step down for sure, but there are hybrid cars and electric cars everywhere. I forget the brand. I think it might be the Leaf. The Nissan Leaf was like the leading hybrid or the leading electric car before Tesla. Super popular in Japan, as well as just hybrids in general. So that's always a plus, is, you know, using energy like that instead of fossil fuels. And then going right along with that is e-charging stations everywhere. So that's something that has been difficult, I think, in a lot of countries as EVs start to popularize, is, you know, then creating the need for electricity to power these vehicles. But in Japan, when we were just in the mainland about a month ago, there were EV charging stations everywhere, like in the middle of nowhere on small islands. This is another one of those things that most gas stations have an EV charging station now, and even some convenience stores. Really cool, and it's really easy to find on Google Maps if you live here. I don't know how it goes in other countries, but you can just literally search charging station and it'll find one for you. Okay, the next category category we're going to be talking about is like food and shopping, and then I have one miscellaneous tip at the end. So the first one when it comes to shopping is this new plastic bag tax that Japan implemented, I think around like August of 2020. It was like a huge deal. I remember all of the stores were like, hey, there's gonna be a bag tax in a month. Hey, there's gonna be a bag tax starting in a week. Like, they were warning people because Japan is plastic obsessed. And I talked about that in the first, like the sister video to this, literally so plastic obsessed. So when I saw this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is huge for Japan. It's not necessarily that big for other countries, states, whatever, but like for Japan, that's a big deal. Granted, it is only 3 yen, which is about 3 cents. It's not a really big tax, so it doesn't deter that many people. But what used to happen is people would bag stuff instantly, no questions asked. Like, I would buy 1 apple, 1 onigiri instantly in a plastic bag. Now it's really cool. Instead, it used to be the opposite. I'd be like, no bag, no bag, no bag. But now it's more, they just assume nobody's gonna want a bag. So then you have to ask for a bag. And if you do ask for a bag, they make sure like, hey, you have to pay this tax. Is that okay? They like really make sure. So not only is it a deterrent from people to get a bag, but it's also, I've noticed employees not even giving bags in the first place, especially when they realize it's unnecessary. Like if you're just buying 1 or 2 things, they don't even ask if I want a bag. But if I buy 20 things, they'll ask, and I'm like, nope, I'm just gonna carry this all out in my hands because I forgot my reusable in the car. Moving right along is there's a lot of food grown locally in Japan. Again, I lived in the rural Midwest in the US, and it's been a few years, but I feel like almost nothing we ate was grown locally, and we didn't ever really have farmers markets either. In Japan, there are farms everywhere. So, you know, in the US, there's farms everywhere too, but it's corn and soybeans to feed our cattle. In Japan, it's more rice farms, potato farms, carrot farms, XYZ farm to feed the people, which is really cool and something you almost never see in the United States. So there's farmers markets everywhere, as well as so much locally grown food, to include their own tofu, their own rice, their own veggies. I think like the only thing they really import frequently is meat. That's because they don't have a lot of land to dedicate to soy and corn, and they don't have the space to raise animals here. It's a really, really small landmass. So they rely on countries like the United States to get their meat. And then very similar to that is they eat a very veggie heavy diet. They're not vegan, not vegetarian. In Okinawa especially, it's really popular for them to still eat a mostly vegan diet. And again, that's just because they don't grow a lot. They don't raise a lot of their meat here. So it will cost them more to eat meat, as well as they really value their health here in this country. So, you know, eating a meat heavy diet like in the United States leads to declining in health. Because they eat a veggie heavy diet, mostly for their health though, it actually is better for the environment because they're not taking up so much land and space and energy to raise animals. And I talked about that in this video up here about how going vegan is better for the planet. And the last one in this category is there's so many mom and pop shops, like small businesses. Now this doesn't necessarily mean it's more eco-friendly. Small businesses of course can use non-eco-friendly practices and materials, but it definitely is more eco-friendly, at least a little bit, not necessarily a lot. And what I mean is because they're not relying on factories to make stuff. They're not relying on mass transportation to ship goods across the country or the world. That there, of course, helps it become more eco-friendly. But of course, a lot of small businesses also use locally grown produce. If it's a restaurant, locally grown, you know, stuff to make clothing or other goods. So that's pretty cool. You see chains all the time in the United States. Hobby Lobby, Walmart, Taco Bell, Chick-fil-A, you name it. So many chains and so few like small businesses. But in Japan, it's quite the opposite. There's so many small businesses and very few chains. Of course, there are some. Every country has their chain of something. But I feel like in Japan, it's a lot less the United States. And the last random thing I have that Japan does right when it comes to eco-friendliness is green energy. So much green energy. Now, they're not like completely 100% clean energy, but I feel like it is so much more than the United States. I'm gonna keep saying this. I haven't lived in the US for a long time. I keep saying that because I know someone's gonna call me out. But what I mean is windmills everywhere, solar panels everywhere. Like every house almost has at least one, if not multiple solar panels. And if that one house has multiple, they're probably powering their little community. There's like fields of solar panels, fields of windmills in the windy places. Like when we went up north to Aomori, it's like this narrow peninsula right on the coast, so there's nothing blocking the wind, so they capture all that wind and turn it into energy. So I feel like it's definitely a step up of the other countries I've seen, like with my own eyes. Of course, I haven't seen every inch of the United States. From what I can tell, Japan's doing really well when it comes to green energy. And one last thing, it's not something they're doing eco-friendly, but just a random fun fact. All of the medals for the Olympics, 2021 Olympics now, are made out of e-waste. That is so cool. So when we went to Tokyo, that's that's the one. So when we went to Tokyo in 2018, we went to this building, the Tokyo Metropolitan Building. It's like one of the tallest buildings in the city that you can go up to for free. Anyway, the bottom they had like the Olympic torch, the Olympic flags, and then they had some medals on display. Ever since Tokyo found out they were hosting the Olympics, they started collecting e-waste from the citizens and then using that copper, gold, silver to make metals. So that e-waste is getting repurposed, and then they didn't have to mine new materials for these metals. I think that is amazing. So just some random fun fact in this video. But that is all that I have. Thank you so much for watching and learning about how eco-friendly Japan is. They still do a lot of wasteful things, but like I said, every country does. You know, the US has a lot of pros and cons when it comes to sustainability, and I just wanted to touch on the ones in Japan since that's where I'm living for now. I'm really sad to be leaving Japan. It's been an absolute blast getting to see this place and learn all this stuff firsthand. Because, you know, you can research a country all day long, but actually getting to see this stuff for yourself is really cool. And even getting to be here for some of it, like the Olympic medals and the plastic bag tax. So if you live in Japan or you heard a rumor about Japan, about how eco-friendly or not eco-friendly they are, let me know them down below. I'd love to hear about it. And I can't wait to do similar videos to this when I move back to the US. I won't probably do it on the scale of like the whole US because it's freaking huge. I've been literally to almost every inch of Japan in just 3 years because it's so small. So I might start small, like with Vegas, like, oh, wasteful things I hate about Vegas. I'm excited for that video. That's definitely coming. So stay tuned for that and let me know if I should do anything else along these lines. But that's all that I have for today. If you made it all the way to the end, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. But that's all I have. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, remember that these small changes you make have a big impact in the long run. Bye, guys. There we go. Good one. Nice one. Good job. Okay. What? I had one. What was it? Oh, the energy. Clean energy. Green energy.